Friends, this episode is a powerhouse. I cannot emphasize how much I love Denise G. Lee. She is a sweet woman, so funny, so funny. She has such a heart for God. She has been set free from a very toxic addiction that was brought on because of childhood events. This is going to encourage you, empower you. Hopefully, if God forbid you are going through the same addiction, it will give you another avenue of help and hope. This is also going to be tough to hear some of the things she's going to say that she went through and that she did through this addiction. So this is not something you're going to want to have your little kids around to hear. It's in the beginning, but definitely find a different place to listen, at least for the beginning part. So there's that caveat. We are going to get into her awesome episode so that you can be blessed by her content. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you for spending your time with me today. For all returning listeners, I'm glad you're back. After the episode, please leave a review for the podcast if you haven't already done so. If you have, thanks so much. I appreciate reading your encouraging comments. They help me improve the content for you all. Want a shout out on the next mini-sode? Check out the links in the show notes. Thanks for your support. God bless and enjoy the show. I am very excited to talk to you. I read your bio on Podmatch and it really encouraged me because I have also had an addiction that I have overcome. And it looks like you have found success afterwards. Unfortunately, that's not always the case for people who have had addictions. Either they have come out of it and they just haven't been able to get back on their feet yet. But it seems like you have, and I'm pretty sure God had something to do with that. So why don't we start with your testimony and then you can share about your addiction and how you came out of it.
Thank you, Anna, so much for having me. And it's just really a pleasure to be here. And I know that every conversation you've had with guests and even just solo, it's just been through a heart of God. And so, good. Thank you so much for your work. So when I think about what you said earlier about success, right, and my addiction, I don't really think it's a success. I think it's God's blessing for today. Mm-hmm. I don't think that recovery is something that, I'm done with this. Like I've moved on. I'm like, I'm riding a unicorn and I'm on the happy land of destiny. I don't think that's what it is. And I don't want anyone who's listening to this or watching this thinking that, Denise is going to share my 5 tips of success as a Christian woman. And that's not really what this conversation's about. You know, I grew up in a situation that primed me for multiple addictions. I was raised in an environment where I had a neglectful father figure, and a mother figure that repeatedly raped me from like birth until like 12, like sexually, like penetrated me with objects and stuff. And I'm not going to get into the graphics of it because that's beside the point. But it didn't stop until I was taken away to Child Protective Services and I gave him my own bedroom.
And was that, how old were you when that happened?
11.
When you were set free from them, it was 11?
I was reintroduced.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, but that abuse stopped when I was 11.
Wow. Okay. I didn't mean to cut
have
you
my
off.
own bedroom.
I just wanted to know.
No worries. I didn't have my own bedroom until I was 11 years old. I shared the same bed with my mother. And so when you're observing and you're watching like sexually graphic things and that's normalized, it was a setup for me to be also normalized when I saw hardcore porn scattered around the home. It was a setup for me equating being touched inappropriately by wouldn't say teachers, but people who are supposed to be in leadership positions. That was normalized. And so it was a gradual thing to just have a full-blown sex addiction. And I didn't think it was at the time. And it wasn't until I was 27, 28 when I actually started getting recovery and starting that healing journey. So you can imagine having perverse sexual relationships with same sex, opposite sex, any type of sex, whatever, that was normalized. And I was going to church. which is weird.
No,
Which
no,
I'm laughing, but you
yeah.
know,
No, I get it because I had a 17-year pornography addiction and I was still going to church and I was judging the people in the videos and strippers and everything and thinking like I'm better, but I'm sitting here looking at this. So yeah, I totally get the chuckle of what was I thinking. Yeah, I get it.
yeah, and I, it was I remember I would just like read through the Bible. And there was Paul was talking about, you know, homosexuals and all these people like, yeah, God's gonna get them.
Mhm.
God's gonna God's gonna get them. You
Yeah.
see? But then
Yes.
somehow
Yes. Our planks were super in our eyes and yet we were like, no, we got you with your specs. Yeah. I get it. I don't understand where we thought we were going with that. But yeah, I completely I relate in so many ways to that.
addiction does a lot of wild things. And
Mm.
my eyes are about to well up with tears because in
No,
my
let it
mind,
flow if you need to. It's
thank you,
honest
Hannah.
Christian conversations. Yeah.
Because like I think for a lot of us who like we go to work or we're parents and we're having all these roles and then we're having something that's like normalized in
Mm-hmm.
culture. I was thinking about I live in the Austin, Texas area, and a couple of years ago, actually, yeah, last year, there was a prominent music pastor in a church that he was found out that over like 15 years of his being that music leader capacity, he was having propositions with young men. And what made it twisted about it was that his wife was a life coach for women, talking about empowering themselves and showing up for themselves. And you're having literally like you're housing a sexual predator in your house. And the reason why I'm mentioning is that there was no way if you're in, because sexual addictions are progressive, and there is no way you could not have seen there was some deviancy. And the whole community around them was kind of aiding and abetting because clearly he was creating good music until enough people were saying this is problematic.
Yeah.
And I'm mentioning this because for me, it was becoming problematic until like they were trying to kick me out my last job. I didn't have any friends. I had, people who were literally threatening my life, former lovers. Like it was a cumulative effect where I had to stop. And I pray that music leader that I'm mentioning means, because that's beside the point, gets the healing that he needs. And for a lot of us who have gone through that, it's usually has to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I agree. My situation got really bad before I finally realized I needed help. Yeah.
So it wasn't until, for me, my recovery journey, I wish I could say that even though I always said I was a Christian, I didn't have a relationship with God. In fact, I had a very angry relationship with God. And it wasn't until I got kicked out from a therapist that I was seeing at the time and forced to go to a 12-step recovery program called Sexaholics Anonymous. It's a spinoff of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in that program, they said, you need to rely on the God of your understanding. And I know it wasn't Allah. It wasn't Shiva. It wasn't all this other stuff. And I didn't want to go like get some spiritual rocks or whatever. I knew it was Jehovah Jireh, but I didn't know who he was. Yeah. Despite the fact that I was raised in Episcopal church, then later went to Roman Catholic church, I didn't know God. I had a Bible that was on the nightstand. It was more or less like decor. I just dusted it off every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Your story is resonating with mine. I didn't come back to Christ until I was 30. I accepted him into my heart when I was 12, but I never really felt saved until I was 30 years old. And that's when I really felt that I knew I was a child of God. And I still had my addiction to get over at that point too. I mean, I think maybe a few years into coming back to Christ is when he helped me get over my addiction.
For a lot of us who are struggling with addictions, I'm speaking I shouldn't say for a lot of us. I don't want to generalize because I don't know everybody's story. But I know for me, the biggest God that was interfering with God, the real God, the Lord God Almighty, Jehovah Rapha, Nisi, they're like the different iterations. But that God was dethroning the parental figures in my life. And they created this environment that my God is myself and my pleasure and comfort.
That's definitely a toxic God. That's how we make terrible choices. That's how we stay in our sin because we think we're most important. We forget that what we do affects others and how others see us. And I'm very glad that I was able to get out of my addiction because my head is so much clearer. My heart is so much clearer. And I imagine you feel exactly the same way. How did you become set free?
For me, it was really actually understanding that my version of God was not God at all. It was about a lot of shame. It was about guilt. It was about self-flagellation. It was about uh, having a sense of just hedonistic values. And that was like, if you think that's God, that's not what it is.
Mhm.
And then there was also anger. It was anger if there's a God who loves you and comforts you, why would he put me in this situation? But think about Joseph. He had a
Yeah.
20-year trip going nowhere, apparently. Like, wait a minute, I'm a slave. Now I'm thrown in jail. What up? I was just telling my brothers about my fancy coat or jacket.
Yeah. It's
What
like
up with
one minute he's
this?
doing this, he's the best, he's riding high. Then the next minute he's in a pit and he's being sold.
So the Bible was and Paul for many years before he was beheaded, he was in a dark dungeon writing letters.
Job too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Bible's like, we could talk about very more examples, but the Bible's replete with examples of people who suffered with cause, with no cause, or
Yeah.
and everything in between. And
Mhm.
so I think for me, the part of healing and understanding my path was saying that you ain't that special, boo boo, which sucks because we
Yeah.
live in a culture that keeps saying you're special.
Yes. Yes. You are absolutely right. That is the toxic thing that everyone is talking about. You are enough. You are awesome. All this affirmation, shoving it in our face, making us feel like we're the best, we're the bomb, we're the bomb diggity, whatever you want to call it from the 90s. That's what I used to hear. All that and a bag of chips. That's one of my favorites. But yeah, as that's not the case, we get puffed up. We start thinking too highly of ourselves. We don't think that we can do anything wrong. And then when we're in the middle of something serious and other people see it, we can't see it. Just like what we were talking about before, where we were judging all these people who are doing all this terrible things while we're sitting there doing our terrible things. Everyone does it. And you have to have humility and let go of your pride to see that you are doing it and to let it go. And that's awesome that is what sets you free, is realizing it's not about you, it's about God. That is very humbling to, especially to someone who has an addiction like that. You have to surrender yourself and what you want in order to put someone else, to put God first.
I just wanted to say something that I got from Brene Brown. I don't go through everything secular, but there was one thing that was really hit me was everybody talks about pride, right? But there's a
Mhm.
difference between pride and hubris.
Yeah.
Everyone needs healthy pride in their ability to communicate, ability to overcome challenges, giving yourself attaboys. But
Yeah.
then there's a different word called hubris, which is not based on anything but other than self-promotion,
Mhm.
which is may not even be grounded in reality. And
Yeah.
so what I think is we all need a form of healthy pride, but it's hubris that we need to work on.
Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. And the word pride has been thrown around a lot lately, that it's been perverted in its actual meaning. You just gave us a really solid, quick definition of what the difference is between both. And I'm thinking that the pride that everyone's throwing around nowadays is more hubris and less pride. But you are absolutely right. We are allowed to be proud of the things that we do, especially when we do them for the glory of God. You're allowed to have that pride. So don't hear us saying that you can't have any pride, that you just got to be groveling the whole time and be like, oh, don't thank me for this. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say this though, and I see this a lot in Christian circles. I know we're getting a little off topic about my addiction story, but I see a lot of people addicted to the pain of serving.
Mm,
And so let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the elder I shouldn't say the elder woman, the deacon in the church who's running the children's ministry, helping with pickups, with the food distribution, helping with like all these things on top of it, making sure that she homeschools all her kids. And she after the end of the day, she's exhausted, and she does this day in and day out, and everyone's thankful for her. And she keeps thinking, but I should be doing more. But there's a part of her who enjoys all the drama of just being dependent on everybody.
It's kind of like a martyr complex. One of my other guests was talking about something like that. It's you like to feel, oh, I'm doing this for the glory of God, but then he knows what your heart's posture is in that. And if you are enjoying that, then there's something wrong with that. You're not supposed to be like, oh, I can do more, but with an attitude of I can do more. It's like, no, God will give you what he wants you to do. It's not about you.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, because for a lot of people who have dealt with addictions, they stop the drugging or the sexing or whatever, and then they move into that arena, which is still a form of addiction.
Mm-hmm. I got really heavy into working out until I started pulling muscles and everything. Then God was like, you're done. You're not going to get addicted to that. Yeah, you have to find a healthy relationship with God, because he's the only one who can truly set us free. And if you don't have that, then you are going to end up getting addicted to something else. Maybe it's not going to be as bad as the first one you had, but you could easily get sucked into something else and do it too much to where it becomes a problem.
Yeah. In psychology, they call it transference. It's just amazing. I mean, I did exercise too. I remember when I was in my first year of sobriety, they told me to not date, not obviously have sex with anybody. You should be having sex with, they're not your husband anyway, but
Yeah. I know what you mean.
I remember, like, what am I going to do with my time? So I did, like, I didn't do P90X. I did Insanity. I remember one person, like, I ran 3 miles a day, and someone's like, are you a fitness model? And I was like, no, I just don't know what to do with my time.
Yeah, I completely get that. You got to fill it up with something, and you got to fill it up with good things that are good for you and that you won't end up making into a problem. So what is it that you do now that you have been set free from your addiction? What do you do now with your life? Hey friends, are you looking for a community where you can grow deeper in your faith? Maybe that's not quite your thing, and you like receiving emails that encourage and edify you because you can do that on your own time. Did you just realize that you have a special occasion approaching and you need a unique gift fast? Well, be prepared to get excited, because Honest Christian Conversations has you covered on all these things. Join the Facebook community and connect with fellow believers who are seeking to deepen their faith. I'm in the group, so we'll get to chat too. Sign up for the mailing list and stay informed about the podcast and receive weekly challenges and Bible verses designed to equip you spiritually for the coming week. I don't know about you, but I could use more spiritual equipping during my weeks. When you sign up, you get my free 7-day devotional as a thank you gift. Explore the store and discover the handcrafted items that are inspired by my favorite Bible verses. There are some fantastic conversation starter pieces in that store that everyone's going to love. They're not just about the podcast, but they are most importantly about Christ. Now that you have stopped jumping for joy, join the community, the mailing list, and check out the store. I appreciate your support. God bless.
I'm doing something that is a repeated vow that I told God many, many years ago, which is crazy because I didn't think of it at the time. So I remember it was just at the heels of one other spectacular thing I was doing, not in a good way. And I was like, God, I'll just do anything. Just get me out of the situation. Just get me out of the situation. And it led me to seeking people, which led me to SA. And then it led me to a crisis point where I was not able to commingle in the corporate world while working on my sobriety journey. And what happened was I became an entrepreneur at that point. First, it was doing personal training because I learned a lot. Exercise, learned a lot. And then I bombed as a business coach because I thought I could just mimic and all the stuff that I was seeing on Instagram reels. And then as I was doing, I was reading lots and lots and lots of self-help books, lots and lots of psychology books, trying to figure out who I really was. And I remember I was talking to clients about life issues, healing issues. And they're like, I came here for business coaching issues.
That's
And
funny.
so what ended up happening was like, wait a minute, I'm not a business coach, but I'm definitely not life coaching, right? So what am I doing? And what I realized was I was providing biblically based, because I don't package it with a bunch of scriptures all over the place.
Yeah,
But
no,
I
I
just,
get that. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes when you do that, maybe you'll get some people, sometimes you'll get people who be like, no, thanks. But there's something in there they need to hear. I get your approach.
yeah. So I just basically wanted to share all the things that help me not just get sober, but stay sober and speaking in a way from a recovering addict's perspective.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what do you have a podcast too, right? Do you do the same thing on your podcast? Is that what you talk about? Or is it a different type of podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is called the Introverted Entrepreneur Podcast. And what I do is I talk just this the way we're talking right now. Most of them the conversations are me, but I also bring in therapists and doctors and other thought leaders in the healing industry. And we just have really honest conversations about how you being honest, being authentic, being vulnerable actually not just helps you make money in your business, but leads a productive life. And all the more for those who are believers, because there are not a lot of spaces that are honestly talking about the intersection between healing, authenticity. And I also do whenever I get a chance to talk from biblically based concepts. Because I think it's sorely, sorely lacking. Because I think a lot of people, they're hearing about all these scandals and they're like, well, of course there's scandals. They weren't following God. Here's why.
That sounds like a really good podcast, especially for Christian business owners. I know several of them. And yeah, integrity and honesty are things that people are craving nowadays. Even if you're not a believer, you're still wanting truth and authenticity. So to find businesses that you know that you can trust, that are transparent with you and honest and vulnerable, that is definitely something that is needed. So I appreciate so much that you're devoting yourself to that and to helping people heal and actually be healed from their addictions. That's also really awesome and definitely important and needed. I think during 2020 with the lockdowns, whether you had an addiction to begin with, I think it got amped up with the fact that you couldn't do or go anywhere. And if you didn't have one, there's probably a lot of people who picked one up, and there's so many people hurting, just like the past that you had. And maybe they didn't pick up an addiction, which I think would be very surprising, but just dealing with the baggage from that and needing to heal. There's so many people in this world who need healing right now. And God is the one who can help them. We are his hands and feet. We are here to help. And those who have been there, done that, and pulled through, we need to band together and help those who aren't there yet, instead of judging them like I used to do with strippers.
I'll say this though, and I don't want to grill too much about the whole pandemic, but it's on my mind that during the pandemic, the churches were closed, but the liquor stores were open.
Yeah. Yeah. It made no sense. Our church didn't close for too long, but they did go for it for a little bit until my pastor was like, I've had enough. We're not doing this, and opened up, and our church has been thriving since. And you gotta speak the truth. You gotta stand up for truth. We gotta do the hard things, and it's going to cost us. And that's why we need to not have hubris. That's why we need to be humble and remember, it's not about us, it's about God. So, what is the name of your website? Because I know that there's people listening who are just sitting here going, I need this kind of help, or I know somebody who does need this kind of help.
Yeah, my website is deniseglee.com. Just take off all the spaces. And if you see an afro, then you're in the right place.
You are so sweet. I love you so much. You're making me laugh harder than I've laughed in a while. I
Follow the
just
fro. Follow the fro. You know, like Lucky Charms, like follow the rainbow, follow the fro.
You're awesome. You have such life in you. I can feel God's presence on you. You love him so much. I can feel it radiating through the screen right now. I can tell that he has brought you from an extremely dark place where Satan meant to keep you, and you have pulled through. You have clawed your way out of that pit, and you have taken God's hand, and he has lifted you up and healed you. And you are being a powerhouse to help others. And even through making jokes and laughing about it, I mean, you either laugh or you cry and you stay sad. And who wants to stay sad? That's not what we're supposed to be filled with. We're supposed to be filled with joy. You know, you're not going, yay, I had all this stuff happen to me. Yay, I was a sex addicted person. But you're going, I see where I was wrong. I don't know what my problem was. And you can laugh about certain parts to be like, what was I thinking? But you remember your Savior. And because of that, you have been healed and set free. And that is very encouraging.
Appreciate that. I wanted to do this because it's not for me, right? It's literally being the hands and feet of Jesus. And so when I think about all the things that I've gone through, and it was terrible. Some of the experiences were just absolutely terrible. I realized that it was designed to help me have empathy and compassion that otherwise they wouldn't find.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people are looking for that spot, that place where you're feeling safe and understood and not judged, because how can I judge anyone?
Yeah. Yeah.
After some of the stuff I've done.
Yeah.
I can't. I was talking with mine a couple of years ago, and she was telling me that she had 6 abortions. One of them she induced, where she pounded her stomach purposely to induce a miscarriage. And I've never had an abortion.
Yeah.
But I realized in that moment that the fact that she was actually feeling contrite about it and feeling, I've never even told anyone, even the last one, what I did to myself. I was like, wow, how many more people would come to Christ if they found people who didn't snap back and say some judgmental comment in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Especially in that kind of a situation, the last thing she needs to hear is what she did was wrong. Clearly, she knows. She feels it. She understands. She doesn't need you to double down and jump on her back and pound her into the ground, or like what we do with dogs, where we rub their noses in their little messes. You can't do that to people. You have to treat them with grace and mercy that you're expecting to get from God. This is something that I have definitely been working harder on, is understanding the whole aspect of grace and mercy. And for what I have been shown, I need to also be willing to give it to people too. So I'm trying not to be as snarky with some people as I have in the past, and understand their story. I don't know it. Why am I going to judge, especially those who don't claim to be Christians? If they're not Christians, why am I going to hold them to Christian values? They're not going to align with those. Why would they? They're not Christian people. So that's a mindset change that we all need to have, and to understand that we're not better than someone else just because we're not in their situation. Remember where you came from and what God pulled you out of, and then go help somebody else who might be in that same situation.
It's so true. And we live in a society that wants to make things feelings based, my truth, your truth, everybody's truth, the dog's truth. And
yeah.
I mean, look, we don't ignore feelings, but we dignify them for what they are. We also care about other people's feelings, but we don't judge reality based on feelings. You can press this idea further and saying, are your feelings lying to you right now? That allows other people to express their emotion while still understanding that it may not be pointing them towards truth.
Mm-hmm. That's wise. Yeah, that's definitely a good tool to help people step back from their emotions, because sometimes they can feel real. They can feel very difficult to process. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and find out, is this really the way that it is, or am I just having a moment? I've had plenty of those times where I'm like, wait, this must just be a moment. Well, thank you so much, Denise, for coming on. This has been an awesome conversation. You are a very bright, shining light in the dark world that we are in now, and a beacon of hope for those who are struggling in certain sins or who have been through what you have been through. And I thank you so much for every bit of work that you are doing for the glory of God. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Anna, for having me.
Friends, did you enjoy the episode? I'm so glad to hear it. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or my website, honestchristianconversations.com. Your reviews help boost the podcast in the ratings, so let's make these honest conversations more accessible to those who need them. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss another episode. And while you're doing that, why not share the podcast with someone? If you want a shout out on the podcast, or to join the community and mailing list, and to check out the Honest Christian Conversation store, the links for all these are in the show notes. Once again, thank you for spending time with me today. I look forward to our next conversation.